Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Prowess Projects Live that we do every Wednesday that we are now calling OBM Opportunity because this is going to be a bigger brand, more coming. Wait to the end to hear more about it. So happy Wednesday. What are we talking about today for all of our online business managers? It is the keys to kissing corporate goodbye. Ashley, how the heck do I get clients? We get this question the most. Like, hey, look, I've been in corporate for X amount of years. Corporate's all I know. Like, how the heck do I do this? Well, we are so thrilled that we have you today. But as always, let's get started by into chat or commenting with this question. Your question is, what is something that you gave up or changed that you're really glad that you did? Something that you gave up or changed that you're really glad that you did. And this does not need to be anything big. This can be something small. Like, for example, I gave up, this is silly, but like Diet Dr. Peppers. I loved those things. Absolutely love those things. But I gave it up and I feel worlds better. So put into chat, what are some that you have given up? Limiting sugar. Yes, Brandy. Yes. This is my alternative, these LaCroix to my Diet Dr. Pepper. What else? No caffeine after 3 p.m. Natalie, how do you do that? Send me all your advice there. Love liqueur. What's your favorite flavor, Brandy? Because like I'm kind of getting bored of orange. Starbucks, another great one, Megan. You gave it up. Love it. These are great. Limoncello. Oh, that's your favorite. I was like, you gave up limoncello? Having long hair, I chop it off. Okay, Stephanie, I love this because I did the wife chop right after I got married. I was like, okay, I had this pretty hair for a few wedding photos, and then no, like needed to got the wife chop. IKR. Oh, I know, right? Oh my God, I'm so old. Jesus. Smoking. Lisa, yes, smoking 18 years strong. Yes. Oh, so great. Congrats. Poppy, gonna write that down. These are great examples. Thank you for sharing this. I mean, this is going to get us in the right spot for today, right? Because again, we're talking about the keys to kissing corporate goodbye. So as always, who am I? I'm Ashley Connell, CEO and founder of Prowess Project. What does Prowess do? We help vet and train online business managers through our online platform. As they're going through our journey, we are matching them or gathering data to then match them up with their ideal customers. So before today, we asked our community in multiple different places, like what are the top things that they wanted to hear about or the top help that they needed in kissing corporate goodbye. And we got some really good answers. Such good answers that this helped us figure out what our lives are going to be moving forward, because as much as I would love to tell you I'm an expert in absolutely everything, definitely not. I have very limited knowledge. So we're going to talk through some of this today and touch on some of the things that everyone wanted to talk about. But more importantly, and I think actually what's going to serve you better, is I am reaching out to different experts to come in to share. So instead of kind of tap dancing and going through what you asked and giving you our answers that are from very limited knowledge, Leah and I decided to answer this question with a why we left corporate and share our experiences from the visionary standpoint and the integrator standpoint, what we did, like what we wanted to build, and then how did we make these happen? What did we go do next? And in it, we are answering some of the questions that all of you asked and just sharing some real world examples of what it looks like. Because I think that oftentimes can be the scariest, or the fear of the unknown, if you will. All right. Sound good to everyone? Okay, I am going to add Leah to this stream. And as I said, we are going to go through the why we left, the what we wanted to build, like what we wanted to go do, and then how we made that happen. So first and foremost, y'all have all heard my story before, but why we left corporate, why I left corporate is because I was looking at all the leaders and they were all men. And time again in tech, I was always doing what are like typically the female tasks in the room. I was taking the notes. I was planning the parties. I was doing all of the gifts. I was doing all of the thank yous, all of these things that weren't in my job title, but because I was a female, I was just told to do them. Um, and a part of all of that is really when the light bulb came on for me about starting Prowess. It's like, hey, I don't want this world where women feel like corporate isn't built for them and for their needs and for their strengths, and we are seen as this afterthought or seen as this um how would I even describe this, as this helper versus the people who shine. And so that was a huge reason why I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do this 9 to 5 anymore. I then had this light bulb of, oh my gosh, we can not only build this platform of what Prowess Project can be to help women have flexibility, whether it's with work and career, work and travel, or work and hobbies, or all these different things, but also create a movement around it. And it can be so much more than just this tech platform. It can be, you know, hundreds of thousands of women strong someday, and really make a massive shift and change in the way that the work landscape works. So that was my why of why I left corporate. So then, Leah, do you mind sharing why you left?
Absolutely. And thanks for sharing that, Ashley. I'm always inspired by your story. And mine is slightly different in that, well, I think we both share the fact that we're people that do things at 110%. I myself am, or I say, recovering people pleaser, and that I have to realize that I can't, there's a balance in what I need to do. So when I was debating on leaving corporate, I had all of these ideas in my head, the what ifs, the wouldn't it be great, all of that. But I got to a point, it was after I had had my daughter, and I realized the words that I was using, and I know this sounds drastic, is that I felt like I was failing in 2 areas. Because I would do things at 110%, I want to do things perfectly at work and perfectly at home. I realized that I was draining myself. And so that cup was getting really empty. And so therefore I wasn't serving either side. And so I had to get to a point where I worked myself into a situation where I was like, okay, something's got to give. And so I knew that I had to take all of these dreams and desires that I had and really be intentional about what I wanted to go do and how I wanted to find balance. And the one thing I do want to share there is that I think sometimes as women, and if please throw this in chat if you can relate, is that we think we have to find this tipping point, or there has to be almost, I hate to say this, but a victim type story of, well, I had to leave because, and I was very guilty of that. I was waiting for this point where someone else would come to me, right? My husband would come to me and say, hey, it looks like you're working so hard. You look exhausted. Maybe you should take a step back, because I needed that permission. I had to really realize about myself is I had to give myself that permission. So that was where I made the decision to leave.
And another reason why we wanted to talk about it like this is there is no right or wrong. Like, I was struck by lightning, right? Like, of this thing that I needed to go do and create. And I'll talk about it in a bit. And Leah's was more of, I mean, how would you describe that, Leah? It was more of like lots of things coming at you and lots of reasons why you needed to do something. And so that was the impetus.
Yeah, mine was more like getting drenched by rain than it was a bolt of lightning. Like, I was just so drained at that point where I was like, I just can't keep going. You know, I need to step back. I need to take a break. And I needed to give myself that permission to get excited about all the creative stuff. Because as much as I was doing a lot of fantastic things at work and getting acknowledged, I wasn't lit up by it. I mean, I could make either the best training program, or I was, blowing the metrics out of the water in sales, but I was not lit up inside. And honestly, I took a look at my daughter and I was like, is this a story that I want her to know? So that was my reality check.
Oh my God, that's so good. So those were our whys. Why did we leave corporate? If you can relate to any of these, please put these in the chat. I'm loving seeing some of these comments. I need someone to tell me it's going to be okay that I go do that, or I'll run myself into the ground. Yes, I think we can all probably relate to that. So next in this story that was the why, then it's the what. What did we go do? So as I was saying before, I wanted to have this systemic change, but I also knew that I needed to bring in money some way. Like, I also knew that building a nonprofit wasn't going to be for me. I am very business minded. I am very structure minded. I am very like, hey, I want to go do this, and I want to do it on my terms with my creativity and what I know that I can do. And so I realized that building out a business, something that was never done before, something that was brand new, something that was hard to explain, quite frankly. Like, I desperately wanted to take that on, like just this massive, like, almost that I don't even know what's happened, like how to describe it, but I know if I put one foot in front of the other, it's going to work out. And at the beginning, when I was trying to put all of this together and even figuring out what Prowess Project was, what I noticed would happen over and over and over again is the universe kept making it harder to quit moving forward than making it harder to actually keep moving forward. And so that's what told me over and over again that I really needed to follow this voice of leaving. And that's really why I decided, like, hey, look, Prowess Project, I'm going to dedicate my life and career and, quite frankly, reputation on this gut feeling. And Leah so beautifully said this morning, because I was like, oh, well, I was kind of impulsive in going after this dream. And she's like, no, Ashley, that wasn't being impulsive. That was being passionate. And so, again, the why is because of all of this inequity that I was seeing in the workforce. But the what was really like, hey, I'm going to build this change that I want to see in the workforce via a business, via a corporation. And then we can talk about how I did that next. So, Leah, what did you
I
go
love
do?
that, Ashley. The similar themes that I do, like, I love that you said keeping one foot in front of the other, although my dance looked very different. It was that idea that I had to keep us, but my what was more like, I'm going to work over here. So I started with, when I left corporate, I had to first take a big deep breath and take a little bit of a break, get the headspace cleared up. And I remember I went out and I did purchase a new computer, clean, nothing on it, because I was going to start learning graphic design, because that was the area I was passionate about at the time. And I went at it with the idea of, like, I don't know where this is going to lead, but this is what I want to be doing. And so that's where I learned how to do that. I partnered with someone who knew a lot more than I did and created a children's book. And with this idea that I worked a lot in, like, it was all about building self-esteem for kids. So I was using this, again, my patchwork quilt was coming into play, but then that sort of led me to something else. And then I started working with other people who needed some graphic design for their business. And like I'd mentioned before, I was helping other moms who had these other ideas. And I was like, I'll create your logo. I'll create your web page. So I was more letting myself be led and going down these different areas. And I had to then, within that, keep refining, staying in my lane of what do I really want to go do. And then, I think my lightning bolt came later, hearing your idea and how structured you were and all that, is when I was like, oh, and I would like to take all of this and help you build what you're, right, get Prowess. It was the website, right? So that's where things came into alignment. But I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't let myself almost explore and figure out what it was and know that I'm going to make some mistakes. It's going to be a little bumpy before I really decide where I'm going in this journey. But what I had to do is keep going. I couldn't just quit.
Yes. How many people can relate to that of like, I need to take this step forward. I don't know what it looks like, and that's okay. And I'm going to possibly screw up along the way. But I would actually say exactly what Leah said, in the sense it's not even a screw up, it's a learning. Can anyone relate to that? Great. Yes. Oh, good. Good. In the middle of it right now. Yep.
Well, and this is something I hear all the time in talking to other OBMs is about that, like, well, I'm excited about this, I'm excited about that. And what if, and that's where like your story is very structured and you joined programs and you were very, let me go down these lists. And it can also look like I'm going to start these courses. And if it's not serving me, I'm going to let it go. Right. And I think it all comes back to what's lighting us up and being true to that, because that's why we left the corporate in the first place.
That's a good point. It is like we're leaving corporate because of a overwhelming feeling of something's missing, and then just keep following that until it hits. And then I think to your point, that's your lightning. And so we talked about our why we left. We talked about how we got there kind of, and what we did. And then now let's talk about how did we take that step to start building what it was that we wanted to do that was no longer working in corporate. And so, as we said, I needed structure, but I didn't start that way. The way that I started was I went out and told absolutely anyone who would listen to me about this idea that I had. Now I was going to help change the workforce, and what was this going to look like? And it started and it looked a little something like this. And then I would get feedback. And then it just constantly evolved. And as I was talking to more and more people, just so happens, one of them was a friend from middle school. And he was like, Ashley, I think that you have an amazing business idea here. And I was like, amazing, really? And he's like, and just so happens, I run an incubator program where we help you take your business idea from back of a napkin to fully incorporated in 4 months. And he was like, it's part-time, you can still work, like you need to be able to put the time and effort into it. And that for me was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is exactly what I need. I had never started a corporation before. I had some consulting and had a consulting agency, but I had never like built a technology company. And so I desperately wanted and was craving the structure of a program, but also the mentors who have gone before me and can tell me, hey, watch out for this, or hey, do this, don't do that. And that was super, super important to me, because like a lot of people in the audience, my husband just decided to that his job wasn't serving him. And so we had to figure out health insurance. And so I had that structured company helped me, and my network of all the different people that I was just talking to about what I wanted to do, they gave me a name for someone who helps with insurance, which if you're interested in that, I am happy to give you his name. Shoot us an email at hello@prowessproject.com. He really helped us design insurance that worked for us for a reasonable price. Going back to what I said at the very beginning, I want to bring in some experts to talk to y'all a little bit more about that. So he may be one of them. So anyway, shoot me a message there. So did digging, found the answer for that, right? And did some research, and it was a great opportunity for us. Then it was, hey, how do I start a business? How do I create an entity? Which entity does it need to be? and did some digging. And y'all, I highly, highly, highly recommend, if you are going out and doing any sort of consulting or starting to your OBM career, get a business entity, point blank. As I said, I am not the attorney, I am not the CPA, but you want your own entity so that if there's any legal issues, it's not connected to you personally, it is connected to that entity. And we can, again, we will have an expert come in and talk all about that. But that's just a little tidbit. And then also what I learned to do was more financial planning of how do I create this financial plan so that my family would be set up for success while I was still getting things off the ground. And so those were some other things. Again, we're going to bring in an expert to specifically talk about that and how to earmark some of those costs at a later time. But that's exactly what I learned during that program. That's when that program helped me understand, hey, what do I need to go do? Who do I need to talk to? What are the steps in order to build this corporation? And most importantly, it helped me build the network that I didn't already have, because one thing that I'm really learning in business is it's all about who you know, not what you know. So that's what I would share as for how. Let me look through any questions. Natalie, did you do that with a CPA or a wealth planner? I'm assuming you're talking about the financial plan. Candidly, I wish I would have spent more time on that. And so my husband is in finance, and so we had like a back of the napkin one and kind of like plan A, plan B, plan C. If I could do it all over again, I would have spent more time figuring that out. And we will bring on someone to walk you through that. Has anyone used a startup loan or start up their online business manager business? That is something I'm interested in, if anyone has done it. I have explored the small business loan extensively. I can share my experience in trying to get an SBA. It was an extremely long process. There are some amazing bankers who help you with that. And I can send over a few. We ultimately decided not to. But again, I don't want to speak for what would be your best way of going about it.
Actually,
Leah, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was going to say, I love how, again, your brain and the structure, what the boxes you wanted to check in how you did it. For me, in addition to that, because yes, those were things that I did. Like I did set up those things in the very beginning, the LLC, the financial plan, but I don't think that I was as structured in keeping with it. Now, granted, I wasn't starting a corporation, right? I was starting more of an LLC, my own thing. There was more flexibility to change things. It was just me. So with that, I was constantly, yes, I had my spreadsheets of how I wanted it to look, but I will say I was a little more, I don't know the term, flexible with my own goals, where I moved in and out of holding myself accountable to being this professional in the beginning, right? So I did, like I said, I did the graphic design for a while, and then I took a step back. I went into some other types of consulting roles. They were slight pivots in what I was doing as far as the niche, but it was, again, my patchwork quilt where I was like, oh, I could go use this, where I flexed into some of my more the counseling supportive things in there, but I was still in a very creative role, helping them build their operations around that. So I was still using those things, but I allowed myself to be a little more flexible in that. All of that, though, again, when I talk about my patchwork quilt, was leading me down to when I realized what I'm really doing for all of these people, and even with the graphic design, was those back-end operations. So what I did was I took classes and continued to allow myself to take different types of classes that built that skill set. And so even if I was taking something I was really interested in and 2 years later I realized I was someplace else, I was okay with it because I let it all compound on what I could deliver at the, to the clients in the end. I also made sure that I was talking to people to let them know, like you mentioned, Ashley, you went out and told everyone. I probably did not do that as quickly as you did, but that is one thing at any kind of group. I wish I'd actually done a better job. I would catch myself when people ask me like, well, what are you doing these days? Being like, well, I'm home with the kids. And I'd be like, wait, that's not what I should have said. So I really had to train myself to be saying, I've taken some time away, to focus on the kids because I'm also building this, or this is what I'm doing. I have a couple clients. And so I think I moved into that a little more slowly than you did as far as really owning what I was doing. And one thing I will share with that is that making sure you are taking the time to build out. One thing I did do well was build out the website right off the bat so that I could point people to that. And then that in itself became something people were like, oh, I didn't know you could do this. Hey, I know someone who's looking for one. And that became its thing. And then I just kept every asset that I was building, I would build it for myself. Like I needed a logo, I needed a website, I needed a pitch deck. And so then I could then show that as an example. And I was much more comfortable talking about it that way than talking about it as I have this business. So finding the way that works for you, but making sure you're continuously putting out there, that part is key, and a skill I had to learn. I'm watching the chat here, Ashley.
Yeah, me too. I know there's a lot of questions about SBAs. That's another group that we can get on here to talk through do's and don'ts and what typically. Another thing that I would keep in mind is before going down the SBA path, because it is a lot of time, really understanding how much money you need in order, like, is this to just set up your business? Or is this to carry you for the first year? Like, why would you need the SBA loan? And I'm not asking you to share. I'm just asking you to think through those type of questions to make sure that that is the best and most efficient avenue for you to go through.
And I will share, and I'm happy to talk to anyone about this, that there are lots of resources as far as the back end of getting things set up, like a website, invoicing, all of that you can do for a relatively low cost. And all of it as you're building it out is sharpening your own skills. So when we talk about like getting your business started for $100, that is absolutely realistic. And Ashley will tell you that I am so cheap when it comes to paying for softwares. I will go find a free tool before I will pay for it. I drive her crazy with this one, but I don't want someone to think it's this huge investment unless it is that you need to replace that corporate salary. That's a different scenario. But if you have the ability to start doing this on the side or build this up, there are ways that part of it, your infrastructure, shouldn't be a very hefty overhead cost. And again, happy to talk to anyone through that.
Yes, that start your business with the $100 is a part of our OBM University. Also, keep in mind that when you're kissing corporate goodbye, oftentimes you can go to HR or your hiring manager or whomever and say, hey, I want to taper off. What this looks like is now I'm working full time. I want to go to 20 hours for the next, I'm going to completely make it 6 months, right? And then you have some income coming in, probably at an hourly rate, which if you're not getting benefits, your hourly rate needs to be higher. And then maybe in 6 months, then it's 10 hours, or you just say stop after those 2. But again, there's lots of different ways that you can get creative to keep money coming in.
One option for where I was leaving was they had a job share program. A lot of big corporations have that, where you can say, hey, I think I want to do something differently. Is there a way in which I can get into the job share? So what that looked like for us was they would take another person who wanted 20 hours a week. You guys now fill that role together. Because again, it was a sales territory type of situation. And then you could be working that 20 hours while you're building up something else and then decide when you're exiting. I've also had it where I've left positions and that company says, okay, but you know all the things that we don't know. Can you stay on as a consultant? So I left the full-time role, but they asked me to stay in that seat as a consultant. And I said, that's fine. I will give you 3 months and you're going to pay me this amount of money, which means I will answer your phone calls and emails. And I really wasn't doing much else for them, but that they still were paying me to reserve that amount of my brain space. So there are options, and I encourage anyone to talk to their HR, like Ashley's saying, talk to your HR departments and find out what else is there.
It is more expensive for them to lose you than to hire someone else. So like most businesses want to try and keep the people they have because of all of that knowledge, historical knowledge that you have. Any questions before we go into the last segment, which is what we would have done differently? All right. If I could go back and do my transition from corporate differently, I would, and you're going to be like, what, Ashley? You just said the exact opposite. I would have followed my gut more. So, and yes, I was very passionate, and yes, I moved very quickly. But what I also underestimated was because I was in all of these structured environments, I feel like I gave away some of my own power. And if someone who had been in business for a really long time, but like incompletely meant well, and I met them in a coffee meeting and they're like, oh, well, you could go do X, Y, and Z, I would go down this rabbit hole and then absolutely like research all of this and, oh my gosh, should we actually be doing this? And should our business be going this way? And maybe this is the right way. And saying, instead of staying true to exactly what I wanted and the mission that I was on. And so again, I wish I would have found like one mentor who was telling me the same thing, who had done exactly what I would have done or what I was doing, so I could follow them, versus taking all of the expertise that may have not fit exactly who I was and what I was doing and making it the gold standard.
I love that, Ashley. Hindsight is always, it's nice, isn't it? And mine, thank you, Stephanie, for teeing up my answer. Mine was that I had a lot of those, oh my gosh, what am I doing moments? And I didn't necessarily, part of it's not following my gut, but I would get uncomfortable almost because I was succeeding, right? And now my time is being spent, but I said I wanted to have this time with my kids. And I would be like, success would happen and I would have this moment, and then I would pull back and not believe in myself that this is actually the path I should be going down. And so for me, it would be, I wish that I hadn't stopped or quit or paused when I got uncomfortable, and that I would have realized that being uncomfortable was actually where I should be, right? Because if this was super easy, then I wouldn't have been happy, because corporate was easy for me, right? And I wasn't happy. So it's almost like realizing when we get uncomfortable, when we're learning something new, that trust that you're in the right place and work through it. Obviously, you're going to talk to those mentors, talk to those sponsors, talk to people about, hey, I'm having these feelings. Did you ever have this? That's a lot of the work that I love doing with people that are in our program. But it is making sure that when we're uncomfortable, that we realize like that's an opportunity for us to like keep going. So that's what I would say, is that I just would have pushed myself a little bit harder in just certain areas. And obviously I love where I am today, but I look back at a couple of things and I'm like, I wonder what would have happened. And so things that I will be revisiting probably.
So I love that, Leah. For all of you who came to the session last week, and I've been talking about this podcast nonstop, but generational wealth podcast. I think that's what it is. Generation Wealth podcast by Candy Valentino. And she shared this great analogy of the differences between cows and buffaloes. And if anyone knows this analogy, I will be very impressed and very excited. So anyway, the analogy is when a storm is coming, the cows, they run away from the storm. And they spend all of this time running away from the storm, trying to stay comfy, get away from the storm, get away from the storm. And they're running. Well, they're never going to outrun the storm. The storm is always going to catch up with them. So they spent all that time running away from the storm, anxiety with the storm, being uncomfortable, waiting for this change to happen, trying to get away from it. And then the storm still happened. And so they prolonged how long they were uncomfortable. Whereas a buffalo herd, when they see a storm, they run into the storm. And yes, it is scary. And yes, they feel the lightning and the rain, but so do the cows. And they get through the storm way quicker, way quicker than the cows do. And so it just talks about, like, if you face your fears and the uncomfortable thing that you know inevitably you're going to do head on, you get to the outcome quicker and conserve more energy. So I just loved that analogy. Yes, be a buffalo.
I love that, Ashley. Thank you, because that's what I was trying to say. I probably would have gotten to where I wanted to go quicker to move through that discomfort.
Be a buffalo. All right, y'all. Any questions before we hop off today?
Ooh, is your spirit animal buffalo?
Mm-mm. It's a chameleon. For another day. Okay. For another episode. Yes. So thank y'all so much for being here. Any other questions? Like, this exercise in this episode today was just so great because it outlined exactly what we are going to bring to you in the future, which I'm pumped about. So one other thing that I would like to share, drumroll please, we are launching our podcast that we will be putting out weekly episodes. Be sure that you have Ashley at prowessproject.com email address in your safe senders list, because we will be sending out the announcement for that podcast and the announcement for the different episodes via email. So make sure that is in there. I am very, very excited about this podcast. This is something that Leah and I have been talking about for 4 years doing. And in that sense of, like, hey, we're going to move through it and get uncomfortable and get the fear and make it happen. That's exactly what we're doing. So can't wait. All right, everyone. What is the name? It is the OBM Opportunity. That's the name. So thank you, everyone. We will see you next week when Leah is talking about her OBM real stories, like from the trenches, things that she's done, things that she would do differently, all of real hardcore examples of what it's like to be an online business manager. So get excited for that. All right, y'all. See you next week.